Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. Today we're talking to someone whose art you likely know, but the human is a bit more of a mystery. That's John Doessel, the human behind the designs and Instagram account at House Logos. His art took off like wildfire among the short-term rental community, and in no time you saw his beautiful depictions of famous houses and cabins all over the internet. On today's episode, we talk about how it started, how it grew, and how his background in brands and marketing likely helped to make it so successful so fast. Join us and find all the details about how to get your own house logo in our show notes. Let's do it. John, welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thanks for having me,
It's
Janice.
good to finally put a face to a name. I feel like you're all over Instagram and a big part of the cabin world in terms of your logos, but we've talked a lot on Instagram and never met in real life.
A lot of messages, a couple logos.
That's right.
You're right. Never face to face. Here we are.
So this is a treat. Why don't you start by telling people, I feel like every single person listening to this podcast has seen one of your designs at some point, but why don't you give us an overview of House Logos and what it is for those who might not put those together?
That's a funny perspective, actually, that I never considered. Like, someone probably sees a house and they're like, oh, that's a cute little design. And then they see another one and another one and another one. And another. Who is this guy? Okay. How did House Logos start? I moved into my house, not a cabin, 1955, like, kind of looks like a ranch from the outside, but probably technically a split level house. And
Yes.
I said 1955. So with that comes a lot of like projects. And I'm like, wait, we're probably going to be doing a lot of those. I'm going to start an Instagram account for it. So I did. And then, they prompt you to like put a profile picture. And I found it really hard to capture like at least the essence of my house. A lot of the details that made it interesting were on the inside, but like, there's like these lime green vintage cabinets in the kitchen. It's like, but you can't have a picture of your cabinets as your profile picture. Like you kind of want to do the outside. So I was just like caught in between. There was this moment of like, how do I represent the house in a single thing that kind of captures the character of the house and everything I like about the inside, but is still the exterior. So I made a house logo. It wasn't called that at the time, but I made a house logo for it. That through the use of the background color kind of captured that chartreuse colored the cabinets.
Yeah.
Now
we should mention here probably you're a graphic artist by living. Oh, nice.
I am.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the original.
Yep. Graphic designer, creative director. I also work in advertising. I've worked on Porsche and Subaru and Harley Davidson, like pretty automotive stuff. Design forward brands. So writer, designer, sort of just like creative at large.
So you had the skills, you had this idea and you're like, okay, but I also have the skills to do this. So I might as well start with this one. How long did it take to go from just doing, and this is the story of every creative entrepreneur. How long did it take to go from making just one for yourself and enjoying that to like, wait, I could make this for other people and turn it into a business?
Yeah, I was too naive to realize the business potential at the time. I think I moved in in July, made the account and put this profile image, the house logo, like in the little circle.
What's the name of that account?
My house?
Yeah, if people wanted to follow that.
Yeah, it's the Longaker House.
The Longaker. Okay, we're going to get into Camp Longaker next.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. We'll talk about that. I started House Logos in March. I'm trying to do some backwards math myself here. So I started House Logos in March of 21. Kind of forget when I started my house account, but somewhere in between those two things, I was getting a lot of messages from people asking like, where'd you get that design? Like for your house, like it looks so cool. And it's like, so Instagram-y and like, I want one. Can you make me one? And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can. And then I made another one and another one and another one. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll figure out how to charge people for these. And then it just kind of like slowly, I guess, /quickly, like became a business. And then it was when I didn't yet see the potential for like STRs and realtors I'm just like, oh, I'll make these for like people who have quirky little house accounts. There's a lot of those.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
And then people were like, I want them for my rental. And it's like, oh, okay. That's a bigger
That's a
market.
whole nother
That's a
market.
whole nother thing. And then like I got a realtor, like, I want to give one as a closing gift. And it's like, whoa, okay,
What a good
that's
idea.
a really even bigger thing. And then like gifts for around the holidays. So it just kind of like I was never like pushing it as a business until it, I guess, like all of a sudden was one.
But the really hard part about that, I find, and I struggle with this in filmmaking too, is like those are very different markets with very different values on the product. And also the ROI on it is different, right? If you're an individual who loves your house and you have a house Instagram that you're not making any money off of and you just want this cute picture for it, or I want to frame it on the wall of my house or something, right? There's lots of value there, but there's no measurable ROI because it's really just your intrinsic
Yeah,
compensation. It's like,
just
how
love.
much do I enjoy this? Right, exactly, which is arguably more valuable than the rest. But financially, it's like how much I'm willing to pay for that feeling is different than, let's say, a short-term rental owner who's like, I don't want to invest in like a whole branding package, but this is really going to do the trick for a lot of our merch, maybe that we're going to use for our cabin. Okay, now we're talking like a measurable ROI on that, which would mean the price point would be different. Like, have you struggled at all with how you serve these different markets?
They take me the same amount of time. If I work on someone's house that's just their house and they want to celebrate it, or cozy rock and you want to use it to put on stuff. So I've always been of the mind I'd rather work with more people than less. So
Yeah.
I feel like I found a price point that allows that. And if
Yeah.
I raised it too high, there'd be people who are like, well, I don't want to. And I love doing it. Every house is kind of its own unique challenge, even though the look is so defined. We've talked about this a little bit. It's like it, it's so defined and it's so like kind of rigid in a way. But then when you apply it to a new house, it like takes on this different life, which I find so interesting. I've made like probably close to 3,000 of them now. And it's like each one I go in with the same principles and the same like approach to the line work, to the coloring, but the end
Hmm.
result is always, its own kind of different.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what's kind of beautiful about it because you do have your own distinct brand and visual consistency, while also each one is unique enough to their property that they can use it for their own stuff, like a hat, and feel like I don't feel like I'm necessarily repping someone else's brand, though I'm certainly, would be happy to tell people where the design came from. It feels like I'm repping my cabin. And I feel like that's what a lot of people want, right? Is like something that feels like theirs. But for you as a business owner, you've managed to do both of those. And I feel like that's often a really big struggle.
yeah, and I think about it from like when I work on an STR, like I I think about it like the guests aren't going to necessarily be aware of like the Instagram presence. They're going to walk in and maybe they get greeted by a
Yeah.
welcome mat that has the logo, and then they're um,
That's a
there's
good
a nice
idea.
welcome letter and the logo's on the letterhead, and then there's a sticker, paper clip to it or whatever, and then they pour a glass of wine later and there's like a nice little etched version of it. It's like, whoa, here's that's a really nice connected feeling experience, I think, for a guest, that probably would for most people feel really unique and
Yeah.
not plastered all over Instagram. But if you do know about it on Instagram, maybe that's kind of cool too as a guest. Like, oh, I've seen
Yeah.
these, and now
Yeah.
I'm in one of the houses.
And it doesn't take away from it at all. If you have seen it on Instagram or you know that you've done 3,000 of them, it still feels very unique to that property. You also just gave me like 5 ideas. We have stickers made
These
out of
stickers,
ours at the cabin, but I love the welcome mat and I love the wine glass. I would never have thought of that.
those are good ones. I like doing the welcome mats in like I always forget the name. It's almost like a burlappy, like kind of rough brown,
Yeah.
rub your muddy boots off on it type
Yep.
material with just like a single color, black.
Now, do you do these products for people too, or do you just provide the designs and then they kind of outsource it and have it made in a whole bunch of different ways?
I do the prints. I do the stickers. I don't do anything else. I
Okay.
just I think about it. I crunch the numbers, I look at what it would take, and it's just like I can't be a production company. like
Yeah.
I, I have a basement.
No,
I
that's good to
have
know what
that.
you're willing to do and what you're not.
Yeah, I
And I
haven't
think
found that like right product that um, like has made me want to invest all the kind of physical space and dollars. Like if it was welcome mats, like well now all of a sudden I'm running a welcome mat company,
right,
and
which is not what you're a graphic designer.
yeah,
Yeah.
ornaments always this time of year kind of gets my brain going. Like if there was a kind of turnkey-ish ornament, I think people would like that. But I'm
I
always
got
so
one as
busy
a
with the
gift at the
logos.
last A-frame I
Yeah.
stayed at. They had an ornament, and I felt so spoiled because in my family, we collect ornaments. Ever since I was a kid, my parents would give us an ornament from every trip we went on, or like at Christmas, we would get a new one. So now we have boxes of like our life in ornaments. So it's still like when I travel, I try and pick up an ornament. We went to this A-frame and they had one that was part of
Good.
their welcome bag. And I was like, this is a really good idea. But now I'm like, maybe I should make them with our house logo. Okay, you work in marketing full time. So I want to zoom in a little bit and take some of your perspective from the work that you do in advertising and marketing. And like when you look at the world of short-term rentals, and I don't know how long you've been following it or if it's just since the logos took off there, but like I feel like in the last, let's call it 5 to 7 years, branding has become a more common thing for short-term rental hosts to be thinking about. I think there were a couple who probably did that really well prior to that, but then
Hmm.
in the last 5 to 7 years, I would say like most people who have one or definitely multiples are thinking about how they brand it. You think about branding all the time for your full-time job. Why do you feel like that's important now more than ever, for those of us who own cabins and are sharing them via hosting?
I've been fortunate to work on um, three of the bigger like passion brands in automotive: Porsche, Harley Davidson, and Subaru, and they all do such a good job of creating this world that you can like buy into and be
Yeah.
passionate about, not unlike a sports team.
Yeah.
Those are perhaps the best example of a passion brand.
Yeah.
Um, and
I've never
I,
heard that term, a passion brand, but as a Subaru owner, I immediately related to what you were
you're
saying.
a Subaru owner. I didn't know that. Great. What do you
Oh
have?
yeah, lifelong. My whole family drives Subarus. Again, to your point, it creates like an identity around it.
Yeah, it's not just a car. Like it's um, it's a whole community. It's a kind of like a way of living
Yeah.
through this product. Which I to get to answer your question more directly, I feel like when you give your house this brand and this like persona and this um, kind of personality that people can see and feel and buy into, they become passionate about it. It's
Yeah.
not just a house anymore. It's not just um, a vacation. You know, it's like they were part of something that was bigger than just like a house. So
Yeah. What tips do you have for short-term rental owners from what you know of how we could do this even better? Like obviously starting with a house logo, I would assume, but like beyond that, how does one create that emotional connection to a very inanimate object? Like
sure,
how do you go about doing that in other ways?
I should have saved my answer about the like connected experience from the minute you walk in, because that's kind of what's always in my head. I don't own a short term rental. I haven't really stayed at a ton, but I like to imagine that connected feeling in the branding and design and just like kind of quality of the experience from when you walk in the door to pouring a glass of wine to even check out and you get your, I don't know if you guys leave them like a slip that kind of like thanks them for their stay, or you said like a welcome bag or a thank you bag. Like if there's some element, um, I guess in my case, like a little logo, uh, tying all those experiences together, like that to me starts to feel kind of special.
Okay, this feels like a good place for you to tell us about what you have going on in your backyard because I feel like you told me a little bit about it in the pre-interview, and I think it's a really beautiful example of what you're talking about. Even if you've never owned a short-term rental, like you have literally branded a place. So tell us about your backyard and like what you've done there.
If any of my buddies end up watching this, they'll laugh because they all make fun of me that like I can't not brand stuff. Like go on a run one time, all of a sudden there's a logo for a running club. It's like just these like kind of silly jokes that go too far until they become something that's kind of fun and gets people to buy in. So another example of that, my backyard. I said the Longacre house. I live on Longacre Street. That's where that comes from. So me and my wife, she grew up in Iowa. We love like having fires, camping outside, doing outside stuff, drinks around a bonfire, smoking meats on the smoker, that sort of stuff. Um, and we were doing that a lot in the backyard. And we just ended up one night in summer, like putting up a tent out there with the kids and sleeping in the backyard. And we kept kind of jokingly calling it Camp Longacre, which like, oh, that's kind of funny and silly. And then I had a sign painter. This is very heavily inspired by like Camp Wandawega up in Elkhorn,
Yes.
Wisconsin. I'm sure you're
Yeah.
familiar with them. Um, just kind of their approach to the whole camp life with like signs and hand painted and greens and whites and yellows
Hmm.
and sort of this like old school Wisconsin vibe. So I had a sign painter friend make us a Camp Longacre sign that I now like display in the backyard. It says like Camp Longacre, smoked meats, ice cold beers, strong cocktails. Um, and we've just sort of essentially, like you said, like branded our kind of backyard hangout into this camp that we have koozies and little matchbooks and silly like kind of camp merch.
Okay, which like seems funny, but like how has that changed the experience for people since before the brand and after the brand? What
Before
have
the
you noticed?
brand, um, we'll host a lot more tailgates. I'm a big Hawkeyes fan, and unfortunately, as of late, Bears fan. We host a lot of people for tailgates, and we end up kind of doing more hosting back there, which is fun. And we have a carport. The house was built in 1955, so it's kind of this small, like unusable carport in a way for an actual car. The house was built when cars were like this small, and people had one.
Yeah.
SUV doesn't really even fit in it now, so we kind of converted that to be part of the camp experience. Like it's got a TV in there, and we make it more of a three seasons room.
Yeah. But I think what you said before you started describing the experience back there, you said, and you said it very casually, but I think this is actually the key of it is like it gets people to buy in. Like I in college I was an orientation leader and an RA, right? And that was like one of our biggest challenges and I never thought about it like this until right now, but like I wonder if that's why I like branding so much because you're okay, let's say you're an RA, right? And you're seen as like the cop on the floor, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like an RA actually could be a powerful community builder, which is why I wanted to do it. And I was assigned to like the most ruckus like party floor of campus, right? And I approached it in my mind. I was like, okay, it's totally fine that people like to party, but even people who like to get drunk on weekends or every day of the week also want community. Like you want to live in a place that feels like you belong and there's people around that you're invested in, right? And so we would have floor themes. So it wasn't obviously called branding. We were like 19 at the time, but that's really what we were doing. We were building like this identity that gets people to buy in. And that first year, our theme was Family Five. And the whole idea was like, we are creating a family around this in this, like, okay, you all can go out and get drunk at parties on the weekends, but like when you come back, this is your family. And what happened is we had like the lowest incident of people trashing the dorm when they were drunk. If someone threw up in the bathroom, other people would like help clean it up so that the cleaning staff didn't have to do it. They started leaving their doors open and putting their chairs out and calling it the porch, like sitting on the porch, right? And I think all that was about getting people to buy in. And so like in your backyard, that's such a good example. By branding it and giving it an identity, you're inviting people not just over to hang out with you, but to buy into like an overall experience.
I think buy-in is a good description of it. I always think of Joe Madden, old Cubs manager. He would
Mm-hmm.
every year have I think he was a phenomenal brander of philosophy because every year he had a saying that kind of represented the season. It was, what were they? Try not to suck was one of them, or yeah, respect 90. The base paths are 90 feet, like hustle your ass off type message.
Yeah.
And I think when you kind of galvanize it into such a specific branded package, like he did, or like you did on the floor, or like we did with like Camp Longacre, it's easier to buy in, versus if in Joe Madden's example, like if he just said hustle or effort, it's like they're kind of throwaways. Or in the case of my backyard, like, I don't know, you want to grill, or do you want to come over to Camp Longacre? It's like,
right, it has a different feeling.
That feels more exciting. Yeah,
that's right. It really gets people to buy in.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same idea. I was a dean of instruction in my past life as an educator, and I worked specifically weekly with our rookie teachers, so the first year teachers, and I learned about like how to brand it because my rookie teacher did that same thing and gave us like an identity and a name, and we brought dinner every week, and it was like this huge, I could probably remember it if I tried, this big long acronym name, but like everyone who was in that rookie teacher group with me, like we had a community amongst each other. And then with my rookie teachers, we had the phrase, this reminds me of Joe Madden. I think this comes from the Marines. Someone told it to me at the time. I think my boyfriend at the time was in the military. My boyfriend at the time was in the military, and I think he might have told me. But he said, like, when they were in hard situations, they would always say to each other, embrace the suck. Like, it's going to suck. We know that, but like, let's embrace it together. And first year of teaching, I'm not saying it's like a war zone, but it's really hard. And we started using that phrase. And I think just like you're saying, it's like, if you have some common language or common visuals around something, it like brings people together in a way that like when it's absent that, you're missing it. So your friends might make fun of you for branding everything, but I think what you're really trying to do is it comes from a place of like wanting people to buy into things that you like and like join you in enjoying them.
Well said. I'll have to get you a koozie.
Yes, please. Those are great. Yeah, those look great. So I just think that's so interesting to think about branding like that. I've never thought about it like that before. Okay, let's talk strategy a little bit. You made the first house logo, and it seemed from my perspective to spread like wildfire. Like I saw it in one place, and then all of a sudden everybody had a house logo. How did that happen? Was that by accident, or did you do certain strategic things? Because everyone is always asking me, how do you grow on Instagram? How do you get seen, right? How did you approach that strategically to make that happen?
Trying to think. I know I'm trying to think beyond my kind of obvious initial one, but we'll start there. I would kind of just on my own accord make them for the most popular house accounts at the time, and I would tag them, and they had no idea I existed. And maybe I did this for you.
You did.
Okay, so it worked.
Yeah.
I would just make it, and I'd tag you, and you'd get this alert on your phone, and you'd, at least, and I think this is what would happen. You go, oh my gosh, that's my house as this like cute little design. Like, what is this? I need to put this on my stories. Like, so I did that. A black A-frame, I want to say, like that was one of the big ones. I feel like that was one of the big first like rental branding black A-frame in the middle of the floor. I did one for them. I did one for you. There was all sorts of these like cute little A-frames that I did that. It gave me content for house logos, and started to fill up my feed with these interesting looking designs. And it was this thing that was really easy for the owners to share.
Yeah.
And they did. And then people who maybe had a cabin saw it and wanted one, or people that didn't have a cabin but had a house or a relative with a cabin or a realtor selling a cabin, it's just kind of like it went from there.
Yeah. If you're dreaming about a cabin build, or are in the midst of a build, or you just bought a place and are getting ready to host for the very first time, regardless of where you are, sometimes you just need a little help along the way. Shared experiences from someone who's been there, advice from someone who's learned a lot of lessons the hard way. That's me. Or a cheerleader as you finish up. All of these reasons are exactly why I started offering cabin consultations to our Instagram followers and friends who could use some specific one-on-one help. I can't promise to solve all your problems, but I can promise to be transparent about our build costs and process, our organization and project management systems, our favorite and least favorite tools for renting, how we market, and how we found ourselves with almost 80,000 Instagram followers and 100% occupancy in our first year of hosting at Cozy Rock. So if that sounds like it might help you, feel free to visit us at staycozycabin.com or on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and sign up for a time to chat there. I always think about, we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but I always think when it comes to social media, I think about the sales funnel, which I use a lot in my business because we do brand films. And the biggest goal of almost anyone who works with us is like, oh, we want to be seen, right? And so you think about the top of the funnel is find and follow and trying to get people to discover you. And so it's like, how do I create content that people will organically want to share? So this probably wouldn't have worked for you if your designs weren't really good, but that is exactly how I felt, right? Like I saw mine and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So the first thing I did was share it. And so then other people are seeing it and your name is going to pop up. And if they like it, they're going to go to your page and then see that you create them from a bunch of houses. That's going to lead to a follow because suddenly they're like, oh, maybe I should get one of these for my house, right? And then once they're following you, you can move them further down the funnel to get them to know and like you, trust, try, and buy it, right? The other thing I think that you did really well is like when you launched stickers, you proactively reached out to me and you're like, hey, like we're making stickers. Do you want some? And how it felt on my end is I did not feel sold to. I felt like, oh, this is a no-brainer. This makes my life easier. Like, oh, stickers is something we wanted to do for a while, but on my long list of 54 things to do right now, like that was just not the top of it. And someone just wants to take that off my plate, right? And so that was like another really smart thing you did is when you did spread from just the logo to like, and I see you do this too with like holidays pop up. You're like, oh, Christmas is coming. Like this is the perfect gift for someone. Well, that's a time of year where we're all like, oh my God, I have to do all my Christmas shopping. And you're like, well, I can take that off your plate. Let me just make a house logo for you. So it feels like, I don't know how much of that was like you were sitting down and creating a strategic plan, or you've just been doing this for so long that you're like, this makes sense. But it felt to me very strategic in a good way.
Yeah, a bit of both. I'll sit here and think like, man, how did it succeed? Like, how did this silly idea go from like my profile picture to like making 3,000 of them? And it was a lot of the things you just mentioned, like the wildfire effect of find and follow. It also happened to be very just like Instagram-y by nature. It's colorful, it's fun, it's fast. Like I see it when I'm going like this, like I don't have to think about it or watch it. It's just, it's fun to look at. The stickers, you're making me want to do more of the stickers or push the stickers a little harder.
Were they hard for you to do?
No.
Do you make them yourself or you send it off to someone and they?
Yeah, I outsource them.
Yeah, because they're really well done and we use them for everything. We like traveled out west last winter and I brought a handful of them with me and like put them like at the ski places that we were skiing. You know, when there's a place with like a whole bunch of stickers, we like left it all over like Wyoming, Idaho has Cozy Rock house logo stickers. Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah, I outsource them, but like I find like if someone were to go and try to make their own, there's so many I'm like, no, don't like give it the white border, like round the edges, like die cut it this way. There's a lot of like little notes that or little like touches that having done it a bunch, like I'm able to do for others that they'd probably be like, huh, what file type, where do I set it, what size? Like it's not
those are literally the things that stopped me from doing it. There's plenty of vendors who make stickers, but I want the quality to be good because I feel like there's this subconscious thing when you're engaging with a brand, the quality of even something as simple as a sticker. If it's a high quality sticker, subconsciously that reflects back on the brand. And so if you're charging a lot per night, it's like, okay, but that's what I expect from this brand versus if you're charging a lot per night and then you give out a shitty sticker. Totally. I know that seems like it doesn't matter, but I really feel like it does.
No, I agree. Like, I mean, I tried out a few before it was like, yeah, that's the one. You know, it's like a nice soft touch kind of thickness to it. Totally.
Yeah. What are some of the coolest things that you've seen people do with your house logos?
Someone recently did a big flag on a flagpole, like in front of their house. I thought that was awesome. They had
that's a good idea.
It was like the perfect property for it too. Like picture backyard, like kind of going down to the lake, like nice sloped, like big flagpole, and then like there it was, like with the logo on it.
Yeah, just give us some ideas.
Yeah. I think it's cool when people like wood burn them.
Yeah.
You lose all the color, but like when they wood burn them into cutting boards, um,
Do they do it themselves or do they send the file off to someone who does that for them?
I think they go on Etsy and
Okay, that makes sense.
they give them the PDF that I give all my clients at the end,
Yeah.
and the vendors can manipulate it as they need to kind of fit the size, scale, coloring. The matchbooks are fun. It's so like old timey and like I
Yeah.
don't even care if you use them just to see it on there and like maybe they light a candle, maybe they don't.
You can give them away to guests in a gift bag for really cheap, but it has that novel feel. But also, you can leave it out to use to light the stove or the fire or whatever. Like, it's just a nice place to have that branded.
Um, Playing cards, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Like seeing it on
Wine
the back
glasses,
of
I never
playing
thought of.
cards.
Have you seen people do wine glasses?
Yeah, like
Yeah. That
etched
feels
wine
like a really
glasses.
good idea,
That
too.
was one of the like that's one of the more popular ones.
Okay, here's what I feel like you should do. I know you don't want to make any of these products, but even if you did like a storefront page where you linked to like your preferred vendors,
Mm,
people who
that's a good
do
idea.
etching, then someone could just go to your website. One, it would encourage them to buy one, look at all these use cases for it. But then if they already have one, I could just go there and be like, cool, I want to order all of these.
That's a good idea.
And if it were like Etsy people, you could even get like a discount code where then they can track every purchase back to you and you get like a small referral fee for each of them because you're sending all these people to them.
Yeah, that's smart. You gonna help me set that up?
I don't know how to set
I
it
have no
up.
idea.
But I'd love for you to do it though, because I want to do all these things, but then I'm like, oh, searching on Etsy to find someone that could do this just feels, I mean, it feels like, okay, I could find time on the weekend to do it, but it might not get done. Like it's probably going to get pushed to the bottom of the list. But then you wouldn't actually have to do the creation of any of them.
It's a good middle ground.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about the Living in the Logo series that you've shared with me a little bit about before and what you're dreaming.
Living in the Logo was an ambitious, while I was on paternity leave with my third daughter, idea to take people inside some of these homes that, on my account, they always see from the exterior. Um, so it'd be in my head an interview series where I work with some of the more interesting clients and houses I have. Like I've worked with some of the case study homes. That to me is
Frank Lloyd
very
Wright houses?
interesting. A lot of Frank Lloyd Wright houses, a lot of amazing cabins like yours, um, and just like a lot of historically significant mid-century houses, kind of like across the
Yeah.
country. And they look beautiful from the outside, but like I guess it started with a curiosity. I'm like, what would it be like to like live in these, or in your case, like
Right.
kind of maintain them and take care of them for others to live in them. So I came up with this series called Living in the Logo that um, I need to get going, but um, right now just kind of exists as a concept.
Yeah, especially because I see some of the ones that you share of like Frank Lloyd Wright houses, which I will likely never go inside, but are so cool. Are people living in them? Like, would you interview the people currently living in them, or are they like museums now? I don't even know.
Some are, a lot are lived in. Um, so yeah, I'd interview the people that are like the current uh, residents or stewards of these kind of amazing homes that feel maybe a little bit untouchable to all of us just on the internet. Like, you live in a Frank Lloyd Wright house, or you live in a case study house. Like, what is that like?
What
Talk
is a
about
case
that.
study house?
Case study houses were it was from arts and architecture. It was 1950s. It was a program to test out like cheap, affordable, simple material but high design homes. And there was like 26 of them, largely in California. So there's like 26 of these kind of example meant to be modular homes that really laid the groundwork for like kind of the modern architecture, mid-century modern, very simple, very elegant, steel, glass, wood, simple material homes that really laid the groundwork for that sort of architecture um, in California and now across the country. But like, there's 26 of them Charles and Ray Eames did one of them, Case Study House number 8. And I worked on the one in San Rafael, Case Study House number 26. But that series was always like a big inspiration to me, just like the kind of like very strong line work and design on the homes and the like inside them and on the exterior, like the very simple kind of pops of color. So to be able to work on one was almost kind of like a house celebrity of sorts.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt when I saw the Frank Lloyd Wright ones. But it feels like you're getting to this point where you started by doing like individual houses, obviously, but you've grown to the point now where you have like this whole collection of work of like your artwork that you've done spanning different styles of houses, different geographic locations. So it makes sense that you're thinking about, how do I build on this? So for example, this year, I think you put out, I don't know if it was this year, a coloring book, right?
Yeah.
Which feels like a cool way to take your collection and put it into a different form than just the individual pieces, but kind of pulling them together into something cohesive that you can share with people.
The coloring book was a great example of that. Before the coloring book, we had the board book too.
What is the board book? Oh, was that the children's
just
book?
the children's book. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the thicker cardstock. My wife, that was all her idea. When we moved into our house and it had like kind of these interesting like architectural bits, and we saw the kids kind of like spark to them, like it was really interesting, and we wanted a way to make architecture a more kid-friendly thing. Like it can be kind of stiff and stuffy. Like how can you fun it up? So like we had that desire kind of like living over here, and then we like started house logos separately, and they kind of ran concurrent for 6 months or so. And then one day we just realized like, oh my God, like that is the house logo is the kids book that you want to do about architecture. I think we were going to make like merch or some silly idea that said like A is for A-frame. And that's how we got the idea for the ABC book. So we wrote that, and that's been great. Like we gift it to friends and family. We read it to our kids. I go to
that why they think
school,
you're an architect?
and they do think I'm an architect. I'll which is an illusion. I'll let them. I'll gladly kind of continue. I call myself a graphic architect, so like I kind of correct them, but like we still think Dad's an architect. And then it was like, how do we kind of take the spirit of the board book and breathe new life into it, and the coloring book became that.
Right. So that's what I like seeing next is like it started as this like one-off. You are one-off doing great things for people, right? Like I love my house logo. I've used it in a lot of places. But then also for you as an artist to be able to take pride in all the art you're creating as like kind of a collection of yours. Have you ever thought about doing like a show somewhere?
I haven't.
I feel like that would be super cool.
It would. I feel like lately I've had these kind of accidental I wouldn't call them shows, but like when I worked with Docomomo Minneapolis recently, like a couple weeks ago, like not too deep on the Instagram feed, check it out. They're having like a fall tour. So like I did 5 of their kind of most notable, they're not all homes, one's a Dairy Queen, but like 5 of the most notable structures in Minnesota. And that almost kind of felt like a show. We made a poster, they made merch. Like I created a little series on the account. I worked with Topo Designs recently to do all their like their 5 flagship locations, which kind of had like show. Amazing. Once I like post them all consecutively, it almost feels like a little like gallery of sorts on the Instagram account. I had never thought about like a physical kind of show. It'd be really cool to do. Man, where would you do it? Like a Frank Lloyd Wright something, or I don't know.
Or like a couple from each of the different things that you've done for people to see the collection as a whole. I think sometimes as creatives, we build and build and build one off. I find this with films, right? I'm making like lots of films all the time for clients, but like we never step back and look at like, or rarely, other than like website rehauls, I feel like, do you step and look back at your portfolio as a whole? Yeah. And kind of take pride in what you've created, because we do it so much for those individual people, or a lot of us do, that to then be able to be like, no, but also I'm an artist and this is my work that, yes, I've done in collaboration with all these clients, but like to feel some pride in the art that we're creating along the way.
You said artist. I remember hearing my dad like talk to one of his friends. I was like overhearing his conversation, kind of listening to it, and he was like telling his friend about like house logos. And I'm like putting ear to it. He's like, yeah, my son, my son's an artist. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of funny to hear. Kind of funny to hear myself described that way. I guess I never really viewed it that way, but then people, I don't know, clearly like the artwork and asked me to sign it. I'm like, oh geez, like people want
yeah
want it signed.
But I think sometimes we need the people who are proud of us the most to like help shape that identity, because it's so easy to feel like an imposter or feel like, oh, I'm just like figuring this out. And then remember one time I talked to my Grampy on the phone and he was like, so your website. And I was like, yes, Grampy. And he goes, people have a lot of nice things to say about you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it turns out he was reading the reviews page of my website. That's what he could barely get his iPad to work on a regular basis, but he somehow found his way to my website and read all the reviews and called me up and told me like how proud he was of me. And sometimes we need those moments where someone who like doesn't know any better is ridiculously proud of what we're doing or calls us an artist to then be like, wait, that is what I'm doing here.
Like, that's true. People do love it. Like, to you, it's just another review, maybe. I'm sure you get a lot of them and they're all really good, but to Grandpa,
That's right. It feels like just, a part of business. I need to get a review so the next person knows they can trust me, right? Yep. We don't always internalize them. Even in the cabin space, I don't always internalize. So I'll be honest, some of them are pretty good. And I'm like grateful they've had that experience. But a lot of times it is a strategic part of business. Please write us a review so that we can find new guests, so that we can keep this business running, and not like, oh, this is what people are thinking of this thing that I've put out into the world. And it requires a lot of vulnerability, I think, to put something into the world that you've created with confidence and say, hey, I think you want this. Like, that's a hard thing to do. Yeah, I think So, but it's interesting because when you did first send me mine, my reaction was exactly what you suspected or hoped. It was just like, oh my gosh, someone took the time to create this of my cabin. This is so beautiful.
Oh, cool.
Then it was immediately like, what can I use this for?
You've been great to work with.
Yeah. So I was thinking, you're living in the logo series. You could make this a very low leverage approach if you ask people to submit their own videos, just like not necessarily like professionally done, but just like, hey, if you want to give us a quick guided tour of your house.
Oh, interesting.
There'd be a barrier to that, right? Like someone like me would be like, fuck yeah, let's go, because I put myself on camera a lot. Someone who doesn't might be like, how do I do this? But there'd be enough that you could start it, which would then show people what it could look like. And then the cover image could be branded of like living in the logo with whatever theirs is on it, right? And then it's like, oh, you want to see inside this house? Here's a quick tour.
I think we just started
like just be a low leverage way, right?
It's like MTV Cribs.
Exactly. Exactly.
But we love I'm really interested. You're saying video. Like in my head, it was like kind of written interview series. Like I send the questions and they answer them. Like you said, low leverage. Like I thought it'd be easier for someone to like at your leisure answer the questions. What's it like living in a Frank Lloyd Wright, or and then get more kind of detailed as you go, and make it feel like for the person who's reading it, like I'm kind of there witnessing a conversation, even though it's all written. But now your video, maybe it can be both. I think it could be both, because the Janices can submit a video. The less Janisy can answer the questions. Right. If you feel more comfortable writing it, go for it. But for me, writing it feels very time consuming. But if you were like, can you just do a quick video tour, MTV Cribs style? If you said that to me, I mean, a child of the 80s, I'd be like, I'm here for it. Let me go. Fridge? Like, yeah. Oh my God. I'm going to do this. I'm going to the cabin in a couple of weeks. I'm just going to film one and just send it to you. And feel like, use it or not, but here it is. No, it'd be a good first one. Well, and you could also invite them to be collaborators on it, because in terms of the high-end funnel, like getting more people to find you, it's just another touch point for them to share about you. Yeah, it's a great idea. You got the wheels turning. I love brainstorming this stuff. Okay, John, it was so great to meet you in real life. So good. I spent so much time with your logo. I do need to fix his hat, though. If anyone watching on YouTube has I know, I either need to do another one where I center it, or Sean thinks I should just like add a little wrap cabin, right? Like next to it. Oh, that's a good idea. I could do words. Oh, I don't write very straight with puffy paint, though.
My future career, I really want to be a puffy paint artist. I just feel like it's making a comeback, and I think you can do puffy paint in a high-end way. That's what I'm working on proving with this, is just how do you make puffy paint, not grandma's art, but like high-end. That's what I do in my free time now.
When I saw it, when my screen was still small before I enlarged it, I thought it was screen printed. If that's any testament to
Oh, that
the
was the
puffy
biggest
paint
compliment. That's right.
skill level.
Well, because there's different techniques. So it is puffy. If you see, oh, guys, you should probably watch this episode on YouTube, all 17 of you. But you can feel the line that's like puffy. And then I paint this with the puffy paint in the center. So that part is flat. But then what's the point of using puffy paint if you don't have at least a little puffy part on it? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, John, thank you for taking the time to chat with me. It was fun to meet the human behind the designs. Tell folks where they can find all your stuff.
Instagram is House Logos. The website is house-logos.com. I don't know who owns the non-dashed one, but they should give it to me.
Nice plug.
That's really it.
Perfect.
All the lawn care house.
Does Camp Liquor have a Instagram?
It doesn't, but it gets a lot of the Longacre house gets a lot of Camp Longacre content, if you will.
Okay. I'm going to put all of these in the show notes. So for folks, if you want to find all those different places, you'll be able to find it in the show notes on either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Amazing. Thanks for joining us.
It was fun. Thanks, Janice.
Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.